My guest today is Daryl Jobman, and we're talking about the early days of trading. He's been in the markets for almost 45 years, including as an editor of Futures Magazine. Daryl, what did you learn about those early days at Futures Magazine in the markets?
Well, I think what I learned most was there are a lot of smart people that are out there and had a lot of good ideas. I was fortunate enough that I lived at a time when I was exposed to a lot of these ideas and a lot of sharp people. And of course, some that not quite so sharp, some of the hype and stuff you had to work your way through.
And what about those early days when traders were kind of handwriting charts? What was trading like back then?
Well, trading was a lot different then in that you had to call your broker. There was a lot of mechanics you had to go through. That was totally unlike what you can see today with the electronic trading. So it was pretty much, the calculator was a big advance. And eventually, of course, computers and all that. So it was a lot more hands-on type of trading with your charts.
What were the articles like in Futures Magazine 30 years ago? What were they talking about?
Well, a lot of the articles were pretty basic stuff about fundamentals and what was going on. At that time, we had some innovators that came along and were developing some things, but unfortunately, a lot of the articles were either beyond my comprehension or what the readers would be able to perceive was good and valuable to them, until there became a point. As I went through the whole stage like a lot of traders, the TRS-80s and the generations of Apples and came along, but I never got that good at programming or basic. I even took some classes in the basic language. Never got good. So I was always looking for some really good articles and something that had some meat. And then of course that's how I came along. One day I got this article from Lou Mendelson, and now here was something where you could get your hands around that really had some meat. It was groundbreaking in terms of what it was discussing and what traders really needed to know to move forward in trading.
Talk about that article from Lou. What was your first impression?
Well, my first impression was, at that point, I really didn't know Lou because he was operating out of Florida and I was sitting in Iowa, and any article that came along, a lot of them were submitted by different people that came along, you evaluated it, and the initial impression was, this is something that we need to know because this is where it's going. Everybody could kind of see the personal computers were brand new. It was an age where a lot of things were going on in the industry. There were so many different things. You come out of the inflation of the 70s and the recession, at least in the agricultural area in the 80s. You had a lot of new instruments that were being traded, lots of stuff to talk about with an article, but how do you deal with the actual trading strategy and the actual testing of what was going on? And that's why when Lou wrote the article about how to backtest systems and how to backtest, these trading ideas that you might have, that really, struck a chord within me in terms of being of value to readers.
And what was the reaction from readers?
The reaction was very good. We got a lot of response back then, and it did lead to 2 more articles by Lou. We ran the first one, I think it was in Futures Magazine in May of 1983, and there were a couple more articles that followed in the same year, building on that subject and that topic, and so that you knew you had a hot button there.
Was that one of the first articles you'd read in terms of trading and using computers to bring the two together?
Yeah, in terms of the personal computer, because the personal computer was brand new. We had articles about computers, but a lot of times it was people that were taking the cards and however they were doing it with mainframe types of things, and they were doing pretty much advanced calculus work. But this was something which was very, individually oriented for the individual to trade on a level at which they could trade, without having to have a mainframe or anything. So that's why it was important.
And you met Lou throughout the coming years on different events and sorts.
So I saw Lou, always was where he came to FIA, the Futures Industry Association expos, and I saw him. He brought his sons, and so I kind of was in touch with him all along, knew about Profit Taker, knew that it was coming along as a piece of software, and that he was also working on some other software. I wasn't following on a regular basis, and he was so busy he didn't have much time maybe to write more articles, but we kept track of Lou, and of course by the time that he expanded his universe. He got into some other software with intermarket analysis, and so greatly moved ahead into other areas beyond the back testing.
So in the 90s then you'd moved away from Futures Magazine, but you were still involved in the trading world.
Yes, oh yes, I had moved away from futures in 1990s, early 1990s, but I was still involved with futures in a lot of different ways, like developing the first website that Futures Magazine had, in kind of working with the editors on technical articles, putting together seminars with some top speakers. So yes, I was definitely involved, in the whole industry at that point too, and still meeting a lot of good people.
So you've had the experience of seeing the trading markets come through all the way from handwritten charts through computers, through the markets becoming more global even. Talk about the importance of that.
Well, the whole evolution of it, kind of is when you look back at it, kind of a natural, from one step to the other. But, to put things together in a global marketplace, you kind of had to look at markets a little differently than just one market at a time. And you couldn't just say, okay, I'm going to look at this chart and this market and make a decision. You kind of had to consider that all markets are interrelated. You had to look at it from an intermarket perspective. And that's what Lou did, with his work. He had moved on from his backtesting software into a intermarket analysis type of software. And so that was a big step, and actually making the computer do the work and not making it just be a glorified calculator.
It sounds like Lou was a pioneer in this area of using computers and trading with those successfully to find good patterns and good trades.
Yes, definitely he was a pioneer in all that backtesting of software and all those kinds of things. One of the other things about Lou I mentioned was that because of his integrity and so forth, he had established credibility and a reputation in the industry that if you look at the industry as a whole, you sometimes get some people that take advantage and the marketing hype and all the other kinds of things. But here, you had a man of integrity, and you had a man with some real credibility and creativity and so forth, and that has been passed along. He's still involved in a company. He's passed along a lot of that, passed the torch to his son Lane, and of course they've moved on and they've now developed a software called TradeShark, which is a really big step forward for the individual trader.
So it sounds like credibility just as important, if not more important today than it ever was, but he had it all along the way.
Yes, it is to me anyway. At least if I were going to write articles, I wanted good, solid people that had something to say.
So it sounds like Lou was a pioneer and kind of made a couple of different breakthroughs throughout the last 30 years.
Yes, he definitely made a mark, several different areas. One, just the whole application of computers, of personal computers, to an individual trader. That was number one. Number two, his backtesting software that he developed with Profit Taker and advanced that software. And then three, intermarket analysis. He was among the very first that really got into the recognition that global markets were the thing. It's even more important today than it was back then, but this was kind of a new idea, creative idea in the 1990s, early 1990s, late 1980s.
Daryl, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
I've been talking with Daryl Jobman about the history of trading in the financial markets and Lou Mendelson's impact on that.